Hi, I'm Taylor Jordan. This is my objective speech. The first time I ever had flown on an airplane, I was only 4 years old. The next time I flew, I was 18, by myself, leaving the country for the first time, headed to South Africa. That's why I chose the plane ticket from me going to London to South Africa for my object. And the trip to South Africa means a lot to me because it was the first time I ever left the country, and it was really the first time I had ever felt like an adult, being alone and dependent on myself and the people I was staying with, but I just didn't have parents there. And South Africa is a country on the southern tip of Africa, as you could probably guess. It's had an apartheid system for hundreds of years, and it's only had a true democracy since the early 90s, so only about 15 years, so it's still a pretty young country as far as its current government. And in order to get that democracy, there's about 25 years of pretty heavy political turmoil and unrest. And the combination of those two things, I'm sort of haunted by this past apartheid. South Africa has a pretty heavy poverty and pretty major racism problems, even compared to the rest of the world. And so despite being a modern nation, it's kind of haunted by these things. And not to make a moral judgment, but often in that time, people are the main focus and animals are forgotten about. So that's why I went to South Africa to be a volunteer at an animal rehabilitation center through an organization called Aviva, which is based in Cape Town, South Africa. They sort of sponsor and help all volunteers in the area, but one of the focuses is on animals, and that's what I went to do. And so the two experiences I had there were mainly broken into animals and the people I met there. So at the Animal Rehabilitation Center, I worked there on the weekdays, and it was about an hour outside of Cape Town. And the climate is pretty close to central US, something like Missouri or Kentucky. So it wasn't like I was in the safari with giraffes and elephants. It was a lot of domestic animals that we see here, including about 35 cats, 30 dogs, and then various forms of birds and farm animals, cows, pigs, horses, chickens. There's a meerkat and vervet monkeys, which are native to South Africa, but by far the coolest and most interesting thing were the baboons that were there, and they were kept in large, caged-in yards that they could stay in packs, and they had plenty of room to run around, and they were completely friendly, and you could always play with them and go in with them to feed them, and they loved attention, and they are some of the most interesting and enjoyable animals I've ever been able to take care of and work with. And the duties I had there were just very basic: feeding, cleaning, general care, shelter if they needed it, if there's a storm coming. And so I would do that during the weekday, and on the weekend I would go back to Cape Town, which is a city of about 5 million people. And I would meet up with the other volunteers there, and the other volunteers are from all over the world, mainly in Europe, but some in Africa and Asia, and a little bit in the US and Australia. So it was a very diverse group of people. It was really cool because everyone was very like-minded, being volunteers there. And so it was very easy to get along with everyone. And the organization Aviva set up various more touristy things for us to do. So we got to go to Robben Island, where Nelson Mandela was held for 20 years. He was the first black president of South Africa. And we got to see the southern tip, or the very southern point of Africa, in a really cool, really well-kept national park. We got to see wine vineyards, which I had never seen before, and were vastly different than anything in Wisconsin. And then we got to climb Table Mountain, which Cape Town sits in between the coast of the ocean of Africa, and then this mountain called Table Mountain, which is more of a plateau. And that was the first mountain I've ever climbed. And the food was always excellent, and it was always really fun to just go in these large groups of volunteers from people people who are from throughout the world. And it was very, very affordable and very cheap. Getting a meal and drinks would usually be under $5. And it was so affordable that actually this plane ticket was only, these plane tickets for the round trip ended up being over half of the cost, even though I stayed there 2 months. So if you're looking to travel overseas, as I know some of you on the discussion board said you've been interested in travel, and you're stuck on a student budget, and you want to get some volunteer hours because it looks good on a resume, I'd recommend going to South Africa.